A barefoot teenager once walked from Siberia to Alaska, across a land bridge shimmering with blue-white ice, chasing nothing but a rumor of better hunting. No map, no compass, no shoes. Just a body built for pushing limits and a brain wired for risk. Most people imagine ancient travel as a brute force slog, like a never-ending marathon. But here's the twist. The human body isn't a tank. It's an adaptable precision machine, and the tricks our ancestors used are hiding in plain sight. One detail that changes everything. Humans are the only mammal that can run a marathon and keep sweating. That's not just trivia. It's the secret weapon behind every world-crossing journey humans ever made. But before we decide ancient humans were superheroes, let's open a loop. Why did most of their travel plans fail spectacularly, yet still change the world? We'll circle back. First, picture an ancient camp at dawn. Not everyone woke up. Survival rates were brutal. Half of all children died before age 15. So why keep moving? Because staying put was deadlier. The big myth is that ancient humans wandered for adventure. In reality, hunger forced every step. Starvation triggers a biological desperation mode. Cortisol floods the system, sharpening focus and killing hesitation. That's why the most audacious journeys started with an empty stomach, not a full one. But here's the first overlooked trick. Humans don't travel alone. Instead of lone heroes, migration was a team sport, each person tuned to the group's weakest link. The slowest walker set the pace, but the strongest watched for threats. That's how nobody got left behind. Here's what's really wild. The average ancient traveler was a child. Children adapted fastest to new foods, climates, and dangers. Survival demanded it. That's why the human body is wired to learn new skills at warp speed in childhood. Migration was a classroom. Now, let's talk biology. Most animals overheat after a short sprint. Humans? We're built for ridiculous persistence. We shed heat through millions of sweat glands. It's messy, but it let us hunt in the midday sun while every other predator napped. This is called endurance hunting. It's why ancient humans could chase antelope until the animals literally collapsed. But there's a weird catch. This superpower only works if you don't overeat. Too many calories, and the body overheats. Ancient travelers had to walk a razor's edge of hunger. Now flip that around. Fasting before a journey actually increased survival odds. Modern science confirms it. Our bodies shift metabolism, burning fat, releasing endorphins, and boosting alertness. That's why the first few days of a migration were the most dangerous, but also the sharpest anyone ever felt. Here's another overlooked hack. Ancient feet. Most people picture shredded soles and endless blisters, but the truth is stranger. Going barefoot from birth, ancient travelers grew thick pads and spread toes that gripped like hands. Studies of modern hunter-gatherers show they can walk 30 miles a day, barefoot, without injury. Our obsession with shoes? It's a recent experiment. Ancient humans hacked their own bodies for traction. But even the best feet can't cross an ocean. Here's where our story gets weird. Humans reached Australia 65,000 years ago, long before the wheel, the plow, or even the bow and arrow. The boats? Bundles of bamboo, lashed together with vines, barely above waterline. No sails, no steering. So how did they not get lost at sea? The answer? Invisible clues. Wave patterns, cloud shapes, bird migrations, even the color of the water, each a tiny data point. It wasn't magic. It was a ruthless feedback loop. Trial, error, and the survivors remembered what worked. Every failed journey wrote the next chapter in the body's playbook. But there's a cost. Most migrations ended in extinction. The survivors are the exception, not the rule. That's the uncomfortable truth. The world wasn't conquered by supermen, but by the stubborn and the lucky. Here's what most people get wrong. The greatest journeys weren't one-way adventures. They were cycles. Leaving, failing, returning, trying again. That feedback cycle hardwired adaptability into our DNA. A legacy you still carry in your mitochondria. But what about disease? Here's a plot twist. Travel was the original health risk. Each new landscape brought parasites, wounds, and mystery fevers. Half the group might die just learning to digest new food. But those who survived gained invisible superpowers. new antibodies, gut microbes, and resistance genes. That's why the world's most traveled populations have the most diverse immune systems today. Now, let's tackle perhaps the strangest trick of all, ancient memory. Forget Google Maps. Ancient travelers used stories, epic, song-length directions, to encode entire landscapes. Every rock, river, and tree became a lyric. Miss a verse, miss the waterhole, and you're done for. These weren't bedtime stories. They were survival manuals, updated with every generation's mistakes. It's a system so effective, some Aboriginal songlines are still accurate after 30,000 years. Now zoom out. Why did some groups achieve world-spanning journeys, while others vanished in place? The answer isn't strength, courage, or even genius. It's a willingness to risk everything, then start over when it goes wrong. And that brings us back to the real reason ancient journeys matter now. Your body is built on their failures. Every time you sweat, feel hunger, or remember a shortcut, you're echoing a 1,000-year-old survival hack. But there's one last twist. The world's biggest migration didn't happen on land or sea. It happened inside your cells, mitochondria, the original stowaways, traveling from bacteria into every human. So the next time you feel lost, remember, every cell in your body is the product of an impossible journey. The story of ancient human travel isn't about heroes or even destinations. It's about learning from wrong turns and using biology to try again. That's the real map our ancestors left us, a body primed to adapt, and a mind stubborn enough to risk the unknown. So when you lace up your shoes or get lost in a new city, you're just finishing a journey that started before history. And if you want to know what happened when those impossible journeys went horribly wrong, stick around for the next video, the deadliest mistakes in human evolution. But let's rewind and dig deeper. What actually happened on those migration days when everything went wrong? Imagine a storm rolling in, the raft splintering, and half the group swept away by icy currents. Ancient migration was always a gamble. The Bering Land Bridge? Sometimes it vanished under rising seas, stranding families with only a horizon of water. The stakes? If your group guessed wrong about the next food source, the penalty was extinction, not inconvenience. But here's the irony. Even catastrophic failures rewrote human biology. Genetic bottlenecks from mass die-offs mean you share DNA with just a handful of survivors. Today, nearly everyone outside Africa descends from a single group of perhaps a few thousand people who crossed out of the continent. Every close call echoes through your genome. Now, let's zoom in. How did ancient people know when to move? The answer wasn't just hunger. It was a sixth sense, reading the land's microsignals. Plants flowering out of season, animal tracks vanishing, or a shift in river smell. These tiny cues told groups when disaster was coming. Miss the signs, and you starved. Trust your senses, and you got a head start the next tribe didn't. Counterintuitively, the best survivors weren't always the fittest. They were the most observant. That's why ancient stories are full of trickster heroes. Brains beat brawn more often than not. But even the best skills had limits. When volcanic eruptions or droughts hit, entire cultures vanished overnight, leaving behind only rumors and stone tools. That's the hidden consequence. Human migration is a story of constant loss, not just epic wins. Yet, every time a group failed, the survivors who returned carried back new knowledge, sometimes a plant that could be eaten, sometimes a warning never to cross that way again. This relentless feedback loop forged the ultimate adaptation, the ability to learn from other people's mistakes, not just your own. And that's a superpower most animals never evolved. Herds scatter when attacked. Humans gather and plan. Now, let's turn to a hidden migration, the spread of language itself. Every step across a new landscape forced humans to invent new words, new metaphors, new ways to describe the unknown. Languages split and fused like rivers, each migration route leaving linguistic fossils and place names, kinship terms, and lullabies. Some words, like mother, echo from Ice Age Europe to the Pacific Islands. Others vanished with the last storyteller. That's the stake. If your group's stories died, so did your map. Memory loss meant literal death. But if you remembered, even imperfectly, you could rebuild, retrace, and survive. And today, you inherit not just the genes, but the words and rhythms of those journeys, each phrase a fossilized breadcrumb. Let's close one last loop. What about friendship? Migration was the original social network. Groups that learned to cooperate, trading tools, sharing secrets, even merging families, outlasted those who hoarded. Anthropologists now know the loneliest groups died out fastest. The most social ones spread everywhere. Hidden benefit. Every handshake and shared meal boosted immune systems too, exposing everyone to new microbes in low doses. So yes, your urge to text a friend when you're lost? That's wired from a million campfires and shared stories long before GPS. That's the real secret. Our ancestors didn't just move, they moved together, learning to outlast the world's worst curveballs. And every time you take that next step, whether it's into the wild or just out your front door, you're writing the next verse of a song older than memory. So, next time you sweat or feel lost, remember, you're not alone. You're part of the longest relay race in history.